Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Coorie In tasting. I'm your host, Madeleine, and I'm going to introduce you now to your ambassadors for the night. First up, we have Mr. Olaf Meyer.
Good evening, Madeleine.
Hi, Olaf. How you doing?
I'm all right. I can tell you one thing. It's a dreich night here in Edinburgh. Almost on cue at 7 o'clock, it just started to rain. It's wet, cold, windy. So I closed my shutters, drew the curtains, and I think I'm ready to Coorie In with all of you, wherever you are in the UK or maybe even further afield.
Definitely. That sounds good. And we'll also bring in our second ambassador, Les Harrow.
Good evening, all the way from wet and windy Harrogate. We're definitely social distancing tonight with about 200 miles between us. We're certainly helping you two guys, Madeleine in Glasgow and Olaf in Edinburgh. And I'm halfway down England. And whoever picked the date for this event tonight deserves a gold medal, considering the theme is Coorie In, because if anyone's been outside this afternoon or the early evening, the temperatures have plummeted. I can hear the wind and rain battering off the patio windows beside me. So it is the perfect night to Coorie In with some friends and some nice whiskey and have a very enjoyable evening and a bit of fun.
Absolutely. I mean, you really got to watch out for those puddles. I definitely stepped in a few on the way into the venue. I'm coming to you live from the Glasgow venue tonight. And first off, we're going to kick things off and just talk about a few kind of housekeeping measures. Most importantly, the bottles for tonight's tasting are now live. They will be live until 10 p.m. So if there's anything that you're looking after, probably best to pick it up sooner rather than later. I also hope that you're all ready and with your tasting equipment. So you've got your lovely tasting sheet here. Don't forget, you've also got cards in your pack that will describe each dram. And I think we'll kick things off with the first dram, if everyone's ready.
Certainly am.
We've also got lots of people saying hello. We've got Ryan Thompson, who says that he really likes your candles, Olaf, that they're looking really good. You definitely got the memo about the Coorie In.
Oh, Jörg, nice to see you. Or you seeing me. So
we've also, yeah, go ahead, Olaf.
No, because the first whiskey we're having, we were planning it with a hot drink, because what is better than to really put your hands around a hot mug or something and the steam's coming off. So what we're suggesting is, or what I suggested was, is a Jagertee, which I haven't realized that actually Jagertee is a denomination only for Austria. So only the Austrians can call it Jagertee. Everyone else, like in Germany, they have to call it hot tea or something, or something else. I mean, I've got it here. It's a protected designation of origin. There you go. You live and learn. Because I was always telling people, because I love my rums, as you know, that my first rum I ever drank was in Barbados back in 1990. But actually, that wasn't true, because only a few weeks ago, well, a few months now, we had a rum tasting in Queen Street. And an Austrian lady was there. And she said, oh, but we have an Austrian rum, which they have, which is called Stroh rum, which is an inlander rum. It's a nightmare that's actually been allowed to call rum. But when we went out with my parents skiing, cross-country skiing, every time we came back, we had black tea and Stroh rum in the black tea. So that's where I started when I was 5 or 6 years old, and it was 80% Stroh rum, 80%. So there we go. So that was my first rum, but my first proper rum actually was in Barbados. But we're not making a rum; we're making a Jagertee. You've had the menu with all the society whiskey. So obviously we're suggesting the one now, the 9440 Food for Thought, to add that. And then you get all the other bits and pieces. But me, like a chef, I'm doing it slightly different, because I'm taking my mug. Got my mug here.
Society mug, very nice, Olaf.
Of course. It's not the right label, but hey, then I'll put some hot water in there. I'm cheating, basically. That's what I'll do. I put the hot water in. And now I'm putting the Strohrum in Jagertee, which has everything in already and makes it a lot easier. So what I'll do is I'll crack that one open. I'll use the measurement. Well, actually, no, I don't use the measurement. My chemistry teacher always said, and a good chemistry rule is, a lot helps a lot. So therefore, what I'll do is I'll just pour that into my hot water. Take the 95. Crikey, that's going to be a. Am I finished by the end of this? Because I mean that is how much? 66.2%. Right,
Wow.
I'll put that in. Put a bit of lemon into it, and I am ready. Stir it, and that's me done. So what I'll say, I say zum Wohl.
Zum Wohl.
Yeah.
Zum Wohl.
Yes, we do. Zum Wohl. Prost. Prost is easier, Les.
I think so, yeah.
And we can start Hüge Coorie In, or as we would say in Germany, gemütlich. So that's what it is. As you can see, the hot tea, so I can put my hands around it and enjoy it. But Les, over to you to talk about the actual whiskey which I poured in there.
Yes, thanks, Olaf. How many of these did it take you to put you on your flat on your back?
I think that one will do.
Just one. Well, I don't have society mug, but I do have something of a treasure trove. The old water jug. Which
Wow.
remember, anybody who's been members for at least 10 years or more might recognise this. And the picture on this side is very apt because it's a picture of somebody lying on a sofa, cooling in on a cold evening like this. So but I'm very jealous of your mug, Olaf. I must try and get one from somewhere.
Yeah.
We're going to do 2 hot drinks tonight because everybody's heard of Irish coffee. We were going to do it with a Scotch, which would make it Gaelic or Gaelic, whichever side of the water you're from. But I did try this dram in it, and it works wonderfully well. There's various recipes out there, but we just used the very basic recipe: black coffee, whipped cream, a little bit of the 95-40. At 66.2, you wouldn't put your whole dram in there. It might be just a little bit too strong for you, but it works incredibly well. So if you want to do something slightly more basic than Olaf's concoction, it works wonderfully well in Gaelic or Gaelic coffee. But on to the whiskey itself, the 95-40. It's spicy and sweet flavour profile. It's from Speyside, and it's a second fill ex bourbon barrel. And it comes in at a very sprightly 9-year-old, and 66.2%, as Olaf had said. So not for the faint-hearted. However, surprisingly, when I did put my nose in the glass, you might expect that strength, a little bit of nose prickle. Nothing at all, just lovely aromas. And this reminded me very much, me personally, of red berries. Lovely sweet aromas, but red berries in there somewhere. Just a little bit neat, but even at 66.2, it doesn't take the top of your head off. It's quite lovely. I wouldn't suggest you sip it like this all evening, but just to get that initial reaction in your palate, it's suitable there. Creamy vanilla there. I got out once we added a little bit of water. Now I did look at the tasting notes as well, and Olaf actually sat on the panel for this one, I think. I didn't get everything that the tasting panel got, but very, very pleasant whiskey indeed. So I've added a little bit of water to this. Quite a dramatic change in the aromas of this one. If you're joining us, please feel free to put any comments up, what you're getting from the whiskey, either the aromas or on the palate. But quite a dramatic change, and I just added a few drops of water.
I'm going to add my water now as well.
Luscious, really sweet. Spices are now starting to come out with this one. Now in the palette, it's the panel, or Olaf's contribution to the panel, says on the taste, however, it was a Bavarian breakfast, white sausage with sweet mustard. And I said to Olaf with a chat just before we came live, and I said, well, I've done a bit of competition for this, and it's a Scottish version. And unless you are brought up in certain parts of Scotland, you may not be familiar with this food item, but it's a red pudding supper. Now, you'll be familiar with black puddings. If you're from the north of Scotland, you'll probably be familiar with white puddings. But there's another pudding out there that we used to get when I lived in Perth. Sandy, hello, Sandy from Liverpool. Dolly mixtures he's getting. But yeah, there was another pudding which you got at the chip shop, and it was called a red pudding. And it is red in colour until they throw it in with all the batter, and it comes out a normal battered colour. But it is a big sausage, and it's just slightly spicy. It's certainly nothing like a Bavarian one, but this took me back to my days when I lived in Perth and we'd play football on a Saturday, get showered after the game, and we'd all go down to the pub in the middle of the town, have a few beers, and before we go home, I needed some substance, and a red pudding supper was something that just used to hit the spot on occasions. Nowadays, knowing the ingredients of some of these things, I probably wouldn't go near it for my health-wise. But this drum did remind me a little bit of the old red pudding. The drum itself.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm not familiar with red pudding. That's not something I've heard of before.
It's apparently it started. Fife was the place where it started. And I lived in Perth, which isn't too far from Fife. So next time you're in a chip shop in sort of Dundee, Perth, Angus, Fife area, see if they've got a red pudding in the menu and give it a try. And I don't think you'll be disappointed, I hope.
I will report back.
Quite a short finish in this one, but really pleasurable and very, very nice. And I haven't added a great deal of water to this, just a few drops, and it just does bring out the spiciness, the sweetness, and a very, very, very pleasant dram to start the evening with. What's your thoughts, Olaf?
Yeah, I had to smile when you sort of said, "Oh, I can drink this just like that." 66 point, and I always say it just divides the real man from the boys, you know. And I'm just a boy, you know. You're a real man. And Tony was saying here on the notes, saying,
having said that, I'm just about to add some more water.
a bit more water, and I think I'll need a bit more water on that one. But that's the beauty about it. Everyone's different all the time, and but you have forgotten the Bavarian breakfast. There's one thing very important which we come on to later, or just in the next one. The breakfast is also with a wheat beer, so therefore that's the proper breakfast. You know, sort of the old Scottish saying: "Have you had a drink yet? No, not a drop." You know, sort of.
Yeah.
So the Austin breakfast drum. Yes. So
well,
there we go.
We've got lots of comments coming in as well about how everyone's experiencing these drams. So Sandy McLennan says he's getting Dolly mixtures. Mark Reed says it's nice with water. Alistair Fraser says old style bubblegum. Which, yeah, I got more pineapple, but as soon as you said bubblegum, I definitely get that. And Ali Cam, amazing smell. James Bullock is definitely getting pineapple on the nose as well. So lots of different notes in there.
And it's changing slightly as well as time goes on. But the name is perfect, food for thought, because when you look at the tasting notes, there's lots of reference to food, and also from the members coming in there sampling it. So it's spicy and sweet, definitely. I saw somebody's comment there saying we'll get more of the sweetness and the spiciness. And I got that as I was drinking it. But I think in the finish, for me personally, that's where the spiciness started to really develop.
We've got a question for you as well, Les, from Peter Brunskill, asking, is a red pudding a bit like, I'm going to say this incorrectly, I think, a saveloy?
I know the terminology saveloy. I've never had one, so I couldn't comment, but a red pudding is quite unique. So if you go to Scotland and you go to a fish and chip shop and you see red pudding, give it a try. Especially you, Olaf, you can compare it with your Bavarian. So if I start to see tasting coming through in 6 minutes time, a red pudding supper, I'll know who was on the panel.
But I'll tell you one thing. This is going to be my daily nightcap now. I mean, sort of this stuff is good.
Well, I will try that, Olaf, because as I say, I enjoyed this dram in the Gaelic
Yes.
Irish coffee, whatever we want to call it. It worked really well there. And that surprises me sometimes with our whiskey because it's such high strength.
Yeah.
And I've had it in cocktails and I'm thinking, this isn't going to work. The whiskey's going to overpower everything else. But surprisingly, it works incredibly well. And this one, I might try some of the other drams in the coffee, but this one certainly did it.
Yep.
Les, can you get me one in Harrogate as we are now neighbours? Peter, yeah, well, might be a bit cold by the time I bring it back from Scotland, but next time I'm going up, I'll bring you one.
Oh, yeah. Good. Well, also, I must say, I'm always quite happy of not mentioning sometimes distillery names, and this is one of those which I'm very happy to just call it a 95, because if I would pronounce it, I would probably be told off because I didn't pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, the locals have their own way of pronouncing this one.
All I can tell you, it was the original Singleton. That's what it was, the original Singleton. But we're going back 15, 20 years. So you can think about that one.
Yeah, and this one is only, I think it's cask. It's only the 40th cask we've had from this distillery. So it's not one that comes around. I think the distillery, the owners only do one bottling of this. So you're relying on the society or other independent bottlers to taste anything from this distillery. Yep. When it was open, I think it was early 70s.
I think so, yeah.
It was really built purely for blending purposes and to pump out, 4.8 million or whatever it is litres per annum for blending. But if you can taste it as a single malt as you are tonight, it's very approachable indeed. And I think as well, if anybody drinks J&B out there, a blended whiskey, I think this is the heart of it. Certainly goes in as one of the components in J&B blend, but very, very nice indeed.
Magnus, that's a good one. Yes, I'll try that.
That's a great one, Magnus. Yeah, just sneeze when saying it.
My apologies. I need to have 5 or 6 of those drams, and I pronounce the distillery name right as well. Correct.
Well, if it's any help to you, Olaf, I mean, I was brought up in Elgin, which is probably only about 7 or 8 miles from this distillery, so right in the doorstep. But I was corrected myself about 2 or 3 years ago, and I said the name to somebody, and it's a guy, a local who lives up there, who said, no, the right pronunciation is this. Yes. So even somebody who lived up there, I still couldn't get it bang on originally, but I know what it is now.
Well, I think that's a great point to move on to the second dram, the 48.113, which is a bunch of sweet peanuts and sweet peas, which is a lovely name. I think you may have had something to do with that as well, Olaf.
I might have, yes. I think the end gives it away again. It's sort of, in a way. The Bavarian beer coming in. And I'll let Les talk about the whiskey, and in the meantime, I'll just pour myself a nice original Schneiderweise wheat beer.
I've got one here as well. I won't pour it now. I'll get into the whiskey first, and as people are becoming familiar with it, I'll give myself the beer, and I promise you it works wonderfully well. This one, a bunch of sweet peanuts and sweet peas. Flavour profile this time is juicy oak and vanilla. Staying in Speyside, and it's a first fill ex-bourbon barrel this time. 7-year-olds. We've got some, quite young whiskies on this evening, but incredibly, they all stand on their own merit. They're really flavoursome whiskey at such a young age. But I think that's the world we live in now nowadays, that because of the wood management that the distilleries and people like the society have got in place and had them for many, many years, the quality of the whiskey at a younger age is really shining through. So this one's 7-year-old. We're going down quite a level from 66.2 all the way to 63.7. So it's still a bit of a bruiser, this one. So it's cast 48.113. And I just got some lovely fruity aromas when I put my nose in this one. And this took me back to when I was a young lad growing up in Elgin and going down to visit my grandparents. And my grandfather was a very keen gardener, had a greenhouse. And when I stuck my nose in the glass of this one, it reminded me of walking into my granddad's greenhouse in Elgin and getting all these wonderful aromas. Now the panel have come out with sweet peas, which I'm not disagreeing with. I was getting much more of geraniums and tomatoes and all that sort of aromas. And this is the beauty of whiskey. And we're all individual, and we're all smoking this same whiskey at this moment in time. And I'm sure we're all coming up with different descriptions of what we're getting. But very, very nice in the nose. Little sip on the palate. This one, bit more character to it, bit more heat coming through with this one. But still very nice. I'm getting that custardy vanilla, which fits in with the flavour profile. Now with this flavour profile, juicy oak and vanilla, and I get the juiciness very much to the fore later on, particularly when I have water and on the finish. For me, sometimes I can personally struggle picking out aromas and flavours when people talk about oak, but this one I get right at the very end, and it's something as a group of ambassadors we've been sort of discussing during the summer months. During the first lockdown, we had a number of guest speakers from Scotch Whisky Research Institute coming on and talking about the ability to smell certain aromas and how everyone's strong in some areas but not others. And personally, I think I'm slightly weak picking up the oak, but I got the oak right at the very finish in this one. So we'll see where other people get it. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water now.
Yeah, we've got some comments coming in with initial impressions. So We've got green tomatoes and basil on the nose. Mark Gately says bag of figs. Ryan Evans, tomato plants. Ali's getting lots of greenhouses, which
well done.
Ties in with that.
At least I'm in the same wavelengths of somebody, and somebody put mint there, and then the tasty notes has got mint chews. It took me back again to my younger days. Can't get them now. You can still get it was opal mints, which were one of my favourites. All sweeties were my favourites when I was a kid. This reminded me a little bit of opal mints, but I added a little bit of water now. The nose opens up and it's quite a balanced aroma with this one, but on the palate, that is so smooth and so easy drinking. And again, I've got to keep reminding myself, 63.7% alcohol by volume. Not to be sneezed at, or we might get the name of the first distillery with this one. This distillery, by the way, 48, Olaf, you can tell me once you come on in a minute. I don't know if you've ever been there.
I have, yeah.
Beautiful setting. They don't, unfortunately, do distillery tours. They do gin tours, which I've been on. Exactly. But the day my wife and I were there, it was a beautiful morning in May. The sun was shining, and when you're standing at the distillery, it's just outside a little hamlet called Cromdale. And when you look from the distillery, because the village or the hamlet sits down a dip, you can't see it. And you're just looking for miles over the Spey Valley. And it's so silent up there. You can hear the birds singing, and that's about all. It's just a beautiful, beautiful setting. But I tried twice to get a tour there. When I booked the gin tour, I asked the gentleman very kindly and explained I was an ambassador for the society and we get a lot of their casks. Would it be possible to have a little bit of a glimpse inside the distillery? And he said, no. He says, if you do it, we'll need to do it to everybody. While I was there, I can't remember the lady's name who does the gin tours, but she used to work for the society in one of the venues, I think in Queen Street. Our colleague Andrew Park knows her. And she was very good to us. And at the end of the tour, the gin tour, I said, is there any chance of having a look at the distillery? She said, I'll go and ask for you. So she went, she was away 5 minutes, came back. And anybody who's been in business or trying to see somebody for a business meeting will be familiar with the answer. She came back and I says, is there any chance? She says, no, they said to say they're all in a meeting. That's a good way of just getting rid of somebody very, very easily. But a wonderful distillery. And I was introduced to this distillery by the society, because I'd never heard of it, never had sampled anything, which you can't, because they've never bottled it as a single malt, the owners. Most of the
Deerstalker. It was Deerstalker.
Yeah.
Going back. Sorry, we're going back. You see my grey hair. Like you.
Well, I'm just going to jump in, actually, because Brad has a really good question about how you buy the bottles. So the bottles that we have are online just now at smws.com. It's not a secret link. They're just all available there right now, not being released at the end. So you can go and purchase just now. But do let us know how you're getting on with this dram. Feel free as well to go back to the other drams as we progress through the evening, because they will all change, which I'm sure Olaf can talk a bit more about how drams change in glass over time.
Yeah, thanks, Madeleine. Now, Les, I have to make you a little bit jealous, because
did you get to see inside the distillery?
Of course I did. And not only did I see inside of the distillery, but
okay. Yeah.
I got a story later on as well, because we always.
You've made your point. You're more important than I am. I know.
No. Don't worry. We always made holidays in Ballinadaloch Estate, where we had a holiday cottage, and I'll come to that later on. And obviously, I visited all the distilleries which you can visit. But every time when we were there for a week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, I'll try to see a distillery which you can't normally see. So I phoned Balmenach up and said to them, any chance of seeing the distillery? I said, well, we don't do tours. I said, I know you don't do tours, but maybe just 10 minutes, could you just show me around? He said, well, actually, I am the distillery manager on the phone, he said. And if you want to come, then come today. And I said, why? He said, well, because the worm tubs are empty. Because distilleries which has still worm tubs, and I think I'm going to start a worm tub club or something, because I love distilleries with worm tubs. It's just a different way of obviously putting the spirit back into liquid form.
Yeah,
that was the first and only time I saw literally into those two big worm tubs down, and you could see the spiring going all the way down, getting thinner and thinner, and because they're never long empty, because obviously otherwise they just break. That's why he said they're only today, tomorrow they're going to be filled again. So there I was standing on top of it, looking down onto the worm tubs, and enjoyed. And
from my notes, it tells me the worm tubs there are 90 meters. The coils are 90 meters long, which is some length.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. And I had to smile when you said that the view you can see for miles. I guess that was because you wanted to see the taxman arriving for miles, didn't you? I mean, you want to make. There's a lovely book about it as well from Sir Bruce Lockhart.
Oh yeah. I'm familiar with Bruce Lockhart, but I didn't know he did a book on this.
It's his grandfather, something who started it, and he was there on holiday. Fabulous book. You have to read it.
Will do.
And just a little story. The taxman came to the distillery, and he looked through it. Everything was fine, and then he sort of said, "And what's actually over there? Oh, that's the peat shed."
I know this. I've heard of this one. Yeah,
that's from that book.
Yeah,
and the taxman sort of said, "If I would be you, I would take a license out for that peat shed." Because obviously it was a distillery, it was a still. Yeah. So
This just before. Sorry, Mags. We will move on. But
you're fine.
This was one distillery, like many others. When you look at the date of founding, 1824, which coincidentally it was the year after most of them became legal. It was feasible then to get a license, and it's amazing when you see so many distilleries. But as you know, the history, it was distilling for many, many years before that, illicitly. And as you say, the location is ideal to see anyone coming from miles around. But you sampled this one before during the panel. What's your thoughts on it again, Olaf?
I mean, these juicy oak and vanilla, I just love. And as you say, actually, just one thing, it says 63.7 on the tasting note, but it's actually 62.7. Doesn't make a difference, but it's just 62.7, so 1% less. But quite funny, because you said you felt it was much more strong on alcohol. I didn't feel that. I thought it was smooth right from the beginning. a drop of water, and for me, this goes perfect. I love my juicy oak and vanilla with my wheat beers. I mean, sort of.
You know what? Amazingly, because when they get sent down, and as you know, we had a quick chat yesterday, and I tried it yesterday, and it works absolutely incredibly well. So you've introduced me to this beer, Olaf. Thank you very much indeed, sir. You're a gentleman.
As I can tell you, this is the beer 148 years in existence. It's now in the 6th generation of the Schneider family.
Yeah.
The 7th generation is already waiting in its wings, and it's like, you know, wheat beer usually is a summer beer, but when you've got a darker one like this one here, that's really where it comes to life in wintertime as well. So for me, this is a perfect beer, a perfect half and a half. And
you shouldn't be mixing your drinks, Olaf. You've had a hot toddy, the Jager bomb Meister. Now you're on beer and second cast strength dram. You're going to last the whole evening, sir.
Just Coorie In. Or Coorie over.
Well, on that note, it's actually a really good time to ask everyone else what they're drinking. So if you are pairing any beers with your whiskey tonight, let us know in the comments. I see that some of you are purchasing bottles. Some of you are trying to purchase bottles. If you're having trouble, please just let us know and we'll take a look. And I think we're just about ready to move on to the third dram after a brief sip of this lovely beer that Olaf has chosen.
Yep. Great. Cheers.
Prost.
Prost.
So it's also, I'm just going to quickly jump in because I'm just hearing from our producer that we are slightly low on the 84.35, which is coming a bit later in the tasting. There's only 17 left. So if you had your heart set on that, it's probably worth picking one up now.
You know what I would be doing? Just have a little sip of it, just see how we think about it, and then we'll come back to it later on. And
exactly.
Yeah, Patty, I agree with you. Schneider Weisse, the best wheat beer in the world. I thoroughly enjoy that.
Rex is on Drygate 7 Peaks, and Riot is on the Weinstefan, which is a good alternative. I agree.
It is. Yeah, yes, it is. It is. Yeah, no, Weinstefan is good. I mean, there are plenty of good wheat beers around. But as I say, for me, Schneider Weisse is just the one. If I have a choice, I would go for that one.
Great.
Talking of having a choice,
you must be an ambassador for them, are you, Olaf?
Yeah, I know. I'm on their playlist, you know. I'm not. But what I like as well, it's a family-run company, you know. It's so funny because they're all called George Schneider. And it was George I Schneider, which founded the brewery. And at the moment, we're on George VI Schneider. And George VII Schneider is already waiting to take over. So truly, I was
waiting in the wings.
I was always, oh yes, yeah, a good old Brewdog Punk. That's a good beer.
And Paddy says she normally drinks Guinness with her whiskey, which is an interesting choice. I've not tried that before.
No, either have I.
We'd probably need a bit more of a, for me, probably a bit more of a sort of deep, rich and dried fruit maybe category for Guinness. I don't know.
Or you could maybe even go with something waxy like the dram that we're about to move on to.
Yep. Madeleine, well done. So
everyone knows I'm a fangirl for 26.
You are. So that's the 26.148. So the 148th cask from the 26th distillery. And we're moving from Speyside to the Highlands. We are on the east coast of the Highlands in a small little village, which is called Brora. And it's a second fill ex-bourbon barrel, 8 years old. As Les mentioned, quite a few of all of our sort of quite young, but the spirit characters are coming really through then. It's 57.4%. So almost mother's milk, dare I say. I mean, sort of after our 60, 66, and 62. And very typical nose for that distillery. A lovely sort of waxiness, oiliness, a bit of salt as well in there. bit of beach foam gorse. I'm always imagine sort of playing golf. I don't play golf, but playing golf on a links course and just teeing off in the morning for me. Sort of first teeing off, maybe at Royal Dornoch or something golf course, and I've just got that in my hip flask to enjoy. Mineralism as well. Yes, that's I'm getting the. What I would sort of describe a little bit of the Rieslings, the white wine with a little bit of peach, a little bit of pear as well in the nose. I could smell that all night. I could just sit here. Brora links course is wonderful. Yeah, as I say, I don't know my golf courses, so I'll give it a try. Now you see, this doesn't need any water for me. It's just so soft, so smooth, sweet, fruity, and mellow. Is it? And I always have to laugh because what is mellow at cask strength? Well, this one certainly is, and it's got a lovely sweetness, the fruitiness, as I say, the pears, the peaches.
Yeah, we're getting lots of salt, so I think a lot of us are picking up on that mineralism. Carsten says bounty on the nose.
A bounty, yes. Yeah, I can see that.
I love the comment, fresh plaster. So I don't know whoever said that is a plasterer to trade, but yeah, I can imagine it. Yes, somebody else.
So I'm taking my little jug, you see, sort of, which is the which is the old society noggin. So I've got that. Add a few drops of water. Just leave it a bit.
Bernard Crump is getting brilliant petrol and Riesling, which is a very interesting tasting note.
It is. It's that older Riesling notes. You get that sort of petrol note, which I know people might say it's a negative one, but I don't. I love those notes. Touch of spice. Yep.
And I agree with Tyler, who's getting honeydew melon and the chalky minerality. That really comes through for me as well.
Yep, white stone fruits. I'm good. I mean, actually, when we're staying off the wine and the saltiness, it could also almost be a Manzanilla sherry as well. That's sort of a fino, but from San Luca de Barrameda. So you got that little bit of saltiness in there as well.
I don't know if it's just me, but I'm picking up Parma violets.
I hadn't gotten it until you said it, but it's tricky how that works, the power of suggestion.
I know you thought it was silky smooth, Olaf, and this is where it's great that, we can both have the same whiskey and come up with something slightly different, because I thought this is, when she had water to it, absolutely lovely, and it fits into the profile perfectly. The mellowness is there, the sweetness and the fruitiness is coming through as well. Before I added water, I thought it was quite brash and aggressive, not in a harsh way, but just, it hit you there, and it was always dancing on my tongue on my palate before adding water. But because I've tried this one before this evening, and as we know, this distillery has a distinctive style to it. It comes through quite a lot, and it's this waxiness which is formed in the production. Well, I got that right from the start. Now, I think that the formal taste notes, there was a comment of lime pith, but I was getting lemon.
Yeah.
It reminded me of smelling the waxiness of a lemon. And that came through on the nose and on the palate right at the finish as well.
Well, I've got a lovely story because when the first time I ever went to Orkney, because obviously Orkney is not necessarily a place you sort of get by chance, and I haven't had time. And once I found a window of a week, which was free for me, which was the second week in December in 2007. Believe it or not, I was making my way up to Orkney, so to to Wick, overnighted in Wick, and then took the ferry over the next day to Orkney. But I was sort of getting up towards Brora, sort of about 2:30, 3 o'clock. So I just dropped into the distillery and said, any chance of a tour? And they said, oh yeah, the last tour is just happening, but I was the only one there in the second week in December. So we were going through the distillery. Actually, first we saw the old Brora distillery. So I saw the old Brora distillery, which I was very pleased, which is now going to be resurrected.
Yeah.
And I then moved over to the new distillery, and they have those big glass windows, similar to Colilla, similar to Glenord, and Glendronach has them as well. And it was stunning. We were in the distillery, in the still house, looking out, and the sun was just setting over the Moray Firth, and it was just phenomenal. And of course, the lady said, would you like a dram? And yes, I still had to drive, but I just thought I'll have one. So I'll enjoy one dram from that distillery, but that picture is still very much in my mind. Time I've got the glass of that distillery.
That windows, I think they're called Waterloo windows. If I'm correct, I'm sure somebody will correct me if I've got this wrong, but I think it was the group who own this distillery and some of the other ones you mentioned had workshops at Waterloo Street in Glasgow, and this is where the name of the windows, so this style of windows,
right?
All the distilleries are called Waterloo windows, I believe. And as I say, I stand to be corrected if I've got that wrong.
Well, you know why they have those windows?
Is it easier to get the pills out when they're repairing?
Correct. If you need to replace stills or something, you don't have to take the roof off. You actually just take the window out. The crane can come there and just take it out and to replace it. So
Madeleine, I cannot believe you didn't get that. I'm doing the Friday night pub quiz with all the quiz questions you've got. And you didn't get that.
I need to go have a word with myself, clearly.
Back to school for you, young girl.
I mean, to be honest, I think they don't look terribly nice from the outside, but it's just beautiful when you're inside, like in Colilla, you're looking over to the Paps of Jura. I mean, and the other one I really love the view is from Scapa Distillery as well, over Scapa Flow. And the other one from last year, which was the first time I've seen that one, is the new distillery on Isla as well, which is just...
All right, yeah. I've just seen photographs of that.
Yeah. And again, they got worm taps, so that's another one for the worm tap club.
The more I'm sipping this, the more I'm getting the mineral side to it.
Yeah.
Didn't hit me straight away, but the longer I'm sipping this, it's starting to come out now. And I'm just wondering, because this is only 8-year-old and it's a second fill, ex-bourbon barrel, that because of the age and it's not a first fill where it's going to get a lot of the influence from the wood, that it's allowing the distillery character to shine through a little bit more in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Yeah.
I hope we will.
Well, Marge, you'll be able to tell us because you're the expert in this distillery.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I get kind of lemony white chocolate, and that's something that at first it was really salty and a lot of minerality, but it's really transformed into a kind of almost like a bit like eating soap, but not in a bad way.
No, yeah. Please don't mention chocolate to me because I'm a chocoholic, so get me going.
Well, we'll just need to do a whiskey and chocolate pairing at some point, Les.
Please. I'll volunteer for that one.
Well, I see James here is saying he really needs to do more tours. He's only done Deanston, Oban and Tobermory. Bunch planned this year, but well, we all kind of know what's happened this year.
But for next year, just two plans, put yourself in the middle of Speyside like Craigellachie, and you've got so many distilleries around you. And then the next time you're going to go to Isla, and again, you've got so many distilleries on your doorstep. So that's the plan. 1 week Speyside, 1 week Isla.
That sounds good to me.
I just saw a call coming in from my friend Sandy McClellan over in Liverpool. I don't know what you've been eating for your tea this evening, Sandy, to get, was it aubergine, something aubergine?
Aubergine pickle.
Yeah, it is you, Sandy, so I can believe that. And he's a long-standing member that we go back many, many years. Lovely guy, and it's good to see you. Well, not physically, but good that you're on tonight, Sandy. And I hope you're keeping well, enjoying the drams.
Dave, I agree. This one gets better and better. It's just, as I say, I could sit there all night and just enjoy it. For me, it's a sniffer dram.
Yeah, I think it's a very easy dram, but it also kind of unravels. The longer you sit with it, you'll come back to this all night and get different things.
Mm.
But as I said, it's sort of simplicity is a nice thing as well. You know, it's a good thing sometimes. You know, it's good to have complexity and you can dig into and you have to find things. But on the other hand, you know, just sit down with a friend like this and just let the world be the world.
And if you gave this one to somebody in a blind tasting, I don't think MD would believe it was as young as 8-year-old either. It feels a more mature dram.
Yeah, I would easily say 14, 15 years old myself. But that's what it is. Age is just a statement of time.
Yeah,
maturity, what really matters.
Yeah, I keep telling myself that at my age as well. Yeah,
that's it.
Well, we keep talking about visiting distilleries, which right now isn't really a possibility for a lot of us. But one of the things we've been looking at this month is our theme of Coorie. And if you watched our First Friday pub, then you'll also know that we were talking a bit about hygge and what exactly that is. So if you're still a bit perplexed as to what that means, we have Signe Johansen, who's the author of How to Hygge, and we're going to hear from her just now.
Hygge, which is the sort of Old Norse version of hygge, actually historically meant to be or to think, which sounds very philosophical and very Zen. And as you might have guessed, is not the interpretation that we've had since 2016. It's all about cozy blankets and hot chocolates and candles. And so to me, it means basically being very present, enjoying oneself. There's an element of kind of healthy hedonism to it, not being too precious about things. And, I like candles and I like blankets and I wear cozy jumpers, but it's not just about kind of the material side of it. Although I'd say whiskey is probably essential. Rather than thinking of it as a season that we have to cope with, it's actually a season that we know comes every year, and it's all about preparedness. It's about kind of getting ready. There's a certain element of kind of nesting, of like looking after, your home life, making your home feel comfortable and safe and a place where you'd want to spend time in. But I reckon that's true of any cold climate, whether you go up to Canada or Russia or any country, any part of the world where you get long, brutal winters. The only difference really between Scotland and Norway and the rest of Scandinavia is that our winters are perhaps a bit longer. So it kind of starts in October and goes until like March or even April beyond. So actually, you've got all the elements, like, as you say, the Coorie, the sort of culture of, and the kind of poetic nature of this whole idea of Coorie is obviously very deeply ingrained in Scottish life. And maybe it's just a word that was kind of, or a concept that was kind of forgotten, but it's a very timely revival. Everything in moderation is, it's probably going to do you some good. And the idea that we have this sort of puritanical approach to looking after ourselves, it's all about punishing ourselves. It's not really what I grew up with, certainly in Norway. And I think most people don't want to live like that. I hope most people don't want to live like that. And so actually this idea of just how that hedonistic tilt is really important to actually be able to say, I'm going to cook myself a delicious meal. I'm gonna go outside, maybe go for a walk or go for a dramble, take a little sip of whiskey with you in a flask. Obviously we can't really socialize in the same way as we did pre-pandemic, but that idea of actually savoring something, I think, is really important. And because my background's in food and drink, well, more food than drink, but I really do believe that that's kind of a philosophy worth pursuing, that we're not constantly negating things, and we're not kind of living in a state of denial and like, oh God, I can't have this and I can't have that. It's like, no, actually, why not?
There you have it, How to Hygge. So I think this is a great thing. Obviously, we're all kind of stuck at home, some of us more than others, as Glasgow and a couple of other areas around Glasgow are obviously moving into Tier 4 on Friday, which isn't the most exciting thing, but necessary. But it's all about that kind of looking inward, but also embracing the outdoors where possible. And I really like this idea of a dramble. Totally on my list to do. I think Olaf has got a really good story about that potentially.
Yeah, but I think I'll let Les first start with the whiskey because it takes a long time to tell a good story, probably longer than drinking a good whiskey. So I'll let. But that's the book, by the way. That's the book from Sigurd.
Yes, and Mark Gately says it's one of his favorite books. So
yeah, it's a fabulous book.
Definitely recommend if you haven't read it yet. Give it
right,
a read.
here's my time to Coorie In. I've got the blanket here. The perfect dram for it, which is cask 84.35 with a wonderful name of Orangutan. And from our flavour profile of deep, rich and dried fruits. This one's from Speyside. It's 12-year-old. 56.8% alcohol by volume. This one spent the first 10 years in ex-bourbon cask, and then the society did a further 2 years of extra maturation in a first fill ex-PX hogshead. Just in case, I would imagine most of our members, if you've been long-standing, will know what PX stands for, Pedro Jimenez, a lovely sherry from Jerez in Spain. Nice to drink on its own, very sweet, preferably drunk cold, but this one really does change the dynamics of the spirit for this one, in my opinion. Doesn't need a great deal of water, but before we do that, the nose, the flavour profile is deep, rich and dried fruits, and it might just be me, but drams from this flavour profile, when I put my nose in the glass, my description is deep, rich and dried fruits. Not very exciting in the original, coming up with something slightly different, but that's what I get most of the time. Really rich, good depth to this one. Yeah, it's still quite subtle, and the big thing I was getting out here was the barley sugar. Now, when I add water to this one, I'm just going to take a little drink of it neat first of all. Tasting notes mention Grand Marnier, which spot on here. Mads, I got dark chocolate. Here we go again. So I'm still in chocolate mode. Love it, but chocolate with orange. But when we add a little bit of water to this one, and this one, folks, I think only needs a little bit of water, not too much, even though it's still quite high in alcohol, 56.8. Personally, I just found 2 or 3 drops of water worked wonderfully well with this one. Now, again, the tasting notes mentioned about rum baba. It took me back to a trip, a cruise we did, and we stopped at St. Lucia a few years ago. And on the way back to the ship, to the port, we had some, can't remember the local currencies, the Eastern Caribbean dollars, which we were advised to take, and nobody really takes them, we just want US dollars. But anyway, we had some in their pocket and thought we'll spend it here. And we went into the shop and we bought some St. Lucia rum soaked sponge cake. And when I was nosing and tasting this, that took me back to that cake that we bought in St. Lucia. Absolutely wonderful.
Yep.
It's, dare I say, it might be too early to say, but it is quite a Christmassy dram.
It is. And never want to let you down, Mags. I just happen to have some dark chocolate here, orange chocolate. That's too big a bit.
Excellent. I raised my glass to you. I should have thought of that.
And the chocolate, I'm not going to name the brand, but it's from Switzerland and begins with an L and ends with a T. And can be bought in more shops,
Yes.
unless it's a non-essential shop.
Talking of Swiss chocolates, have you ever had Caillé?
No.
Oh,
No.
that's what you need to try. It's C-A-I-L-E-R, Caillé chocolate.
Okay.
Olaf, don't put me off this dram. This is wonderful. I need to take it down before the chocolate melts completely.
So Rex has just complimented your artwork, Les. I believe that's the second comment you've had on artwork tonight.
Joe Lomo is the artist. That's Tobermory. The one up above is Inverary, and we've got one of Bowmore looking up from the harbour towards the round church as well. Wonderful artist, if you like that style of work, which my wife and I both love. So thank you for that, for complimenting. Take me right off this dram.
Well, we'll go back to some of the comments. Tyler's. Oh, go ahead, Les.
Yeah, no, just because I know Olaf's going to come out with his story. I don't want to sort of disappoint him there, but this just a little bit about this distillery. You might pick up on it as well, Olaf. The distillery is located in Dufftown, in the heart of Bayside. And anytime we've had a bottle, and this is only the 35th cask that we've had through the society, but we've had several in the last few years. There was one in particular that had the wonderful name of Fluffernutter. And when a table of couples from Leeds at a tasting in Harrogate, and the ladies just went bananas over this Fluffernutter from this distillery. And when I've had a cask from this distillery on at a tasting, it's normally been first dram of the night, possibly the second, because it's usually quite a light, easy drinking style of whiskey. But this one, what the society have done by this extra maturation in this PX hogshead is just taken the dram off in a completely different direction, and just absolutely amazing, absolutely wonderful. It does it for me. This one, I'll tell you my little Coorie In story before Olaf, which is quite useful, because if you can be patient with this dram, leave it alone, go back to it in 5 minutes, and all of a sudden you'll be drinking something even more magnificent. It really, really does develop and really comes out in the glass, this one, after a few minutes. And certainly this, as you said, Mads, this is a perfect sort of Christmas time and a wonderful Coorie In dram for me. So enjoy this one. But my story about Coorie In, and we talk about Coorie In is going out in the cold and then coming back in somewhere warm. But mine was slightly back to front. And I'll go back to 2013. And if you live in Harrogate, I know we've got some local members tuning in tonight. My wife and I lived in a village called Panel, which is just in the outskirts of Harrogate. It is like its own village community, but you can still walk into Harrogate in 20 minutes, 30 minutes from there. But a lovely little place, and when we moved in, we went up and frequented the local pub, which unfortunately now is a Co-op supermarket. The pub closed down, but at that time, lovely pub, and it sat right on the platform. And the owner, we were in there over Christmas time, and he says, January's quiet for us. He says, why don't you think about doing a Burns night? Great idea. And he knew I was involved with whiskey with the society. He said, would you come up and introduce 2 or 3 whiskies if we, so we created this Burns night. So I went up with a kilt on, and we struggled up the road, up the hill to the pub this night, a dark, cold January evening. Pub was lovely and warm, and we had a lovely 3-course meal with haggis, neeps and tatties. And I'm introducing 3 drams during the course of the evening. And the back of the pub had big windows looking onto the platform of the railway station. And of course, it was well lit with all the floodlights for the station. And halfway through the night, the snow started to fall. And it wasn't blowing a gale. It was just coming down very gently and very slowly. And it looked a wonderful sight. But after about an hour, people were beginning to panic in there, thinking, I've got to get back to Harrogate, and the taxi's going to get here. We can jump on the train. And it was just wonderful. We were in this pub. We were nice and cozy. We had some lovely food. There was a couple of a dozen of us getting friendly. We didn't know each other, and having a chat and having some wonderful whiskey, looking out at this heavy blanket of snow coming down. So instead of coming in from the cold to warm up after being out in it, it was the opposite. But because of these picture windows and looking out in the brightly lit railway platform and seeing this snow just coming down quite heavily, it was a magical Coorie In moment for me, but not as exciting as your one, Olaf.
Not sure.
Before Olaf gets started, some of you have noticed that the 84.35 has sold out. We do have a few more bottles that we are going to add online now. So here is your chance to get this bottle now.
Olaf's talking, I'll go and order those 3 bottles for myself. It's wonderful. I'm only joking, folks. I won't.
Well, this is one per member. But if you missed out the first go around,
my wife's a member, so that's 2.
and on that note, Peter, I think, was having some trouble getting into his account. For anyone who hasn't logged into their account since we've changed over to the new website platform, you need to reset your password. And once you do that, you should be able to get into your account as normal. But now I believe Olaf was going to tell his Coorie In story, which I would like to hear.
Which is quite funny because we were talking about Coorie In and you also heard just talking about dramble, and I said to Madeleine and to Les, what does dramble mean? And they said, well, you ramble with a whiskey. And I said, well, I've been doing this for 20 years, but I didn't know it was dramble because as I said, I've did many holidays in Ballindalloch in a cottage in the middle of nowhere. So the people who know Speyside, I'll give you a little bit of an idea. So basically, you're going down to Cragganmore Distillery. So just before you get to Ballindalloch Distillery, you make a sharp left, go down to Cragganmore. You are parking then at the Ballindalloch train station, which is the old train set, which is Speyside Way, where you can walk as well. So you park there, you walk over the bridge, which is an old railway bridge from 1860. And then on the right-hand side, there is this little cottage. There's nothing else. There's just one cottage. And that's where we spent lots and lots of holidays. Amongst one of them was in January 2003. And I'm just getting the BBC weather diary of the highlights of that. It was an anti-cyclone spell in the first third of January, gave plenty of dry and clear weather with some very low temperature. During the cold and dry spell that lasted from the 3rd to the 11th, the lowest temperature were experienced on the 7th, when it was minus 18 degrees centigrade recorded at Aviemore. Now, I wasn't too far away from Aviemore, and I was there from the 1st of January until the 7th of January. It was there with my family, with my wife, my 2 children, and a good friend from Germany. We just had Hogmanay in Edinburgh, and then we made our way on the 1st of January going up to the cottage for a week. I thought I had a great idea of my wife dropping me off with my friend at Cardew Distillery, which is not that far away. We'll do a tour at the Cardew Distillery and then just walk back to the cottage. That was a great idea. We went to the distillery at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Little did I remember that it was getting dark at 4 or 4:30. So we did the tour. We had a good few drams. We bought a bottle of Cardew as well. Thank God for that, because we needed it. And then we started to walk. It was pitch dark. Actually, it wasn't full moon. I thought it was full moon, but I checked. It was enough moonlight to actually show us the way. And I was heading down the hill to try and find the Speyside Way, to then make a right and then walk along the Speyside Way, the old train line, back to the cottage. But could I find it? I couldn't, because it was so pitch dark and it was all snow, and the snow was going up to our knees. And my friend was a little bit more worried about things than me. I just played it cool. I said, I'll find it. Don't you worry. So finally I decided, I think we go right now, because it might be the Speyside Way. No idea. So we kept walking. I was getting a little bit nervous myself, but then we came to Knockandu Distillery, and I knew we were on the right way. So once we got to Tumdu Distillery, which had the nice station there as well, we sat down and cracked open the Cardew and had a good little swig of that, because it was very tiring, the walk. It was about 5 miles. So I thought it's going to take us a good hour. But actually, with the snow that high, it was very, very difficult. So we kept on walking. Thank God, halfway there was actually a tractor, obviously making a track at one point, so we could walk in the tracks of that tractor of walking along there. So we finally managed it. I don't know, probably 2.5 hours. I mean, probably my wife was already calling the police or something where we are, and we walked to the cottage. It was lit, little windows, tiny little windows where the light was coming through. There was a wood fire going, so you could see the smoke coming out of the chimney. we just walked in very tired, just took our shoes off, took our coat off, sat in the lounge in front of the open fire and had another cardew. And I've never told my friend that I didn't know if we're actually on the right way. And but it was just, that was a moment which I must say, bitterly cold. And that cardew probably saved our life.
Wow. I just, that's crazy. They should make a film of that.
I know.
Maybe a short film, because it would be a long, but I'm sure it was a very long journey, or I'm sure it felt like it was hours.
It felt a very long journey, yes. Yeah. But, it's a good story to tell afterwards, but while we were there, and I wasn't quite sure actually if I'm walking the right direction as well. It wasn't quite that funny because going back to 2003, mobile telecommunication wasn't quite up to the scratch as it's now. Even now, still in Speyside, you might have difficulties to get a signal.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there are other parts of Scotland as well where you struggle with mobile signal. And Charlie's actually just popped in there with a great Coorie In moment of his own, which is having a dram in the Himalayas, which just sounds incredible.
Right. Much more exciting.
Bit more exciting than my local in Camden Station.
I can tell you one thing. I can tell you all one thing as well. That was one story. But actually, we were there in July 2006 for 3 weeks, again at the same cottage. That's what Scotland is for you. And the Scotland Diary highlights for July 2006 was a temperature of 25 degrees or more was recorded in Scotland on 20 days, including 15 consecutive days between the 15th and the 29th of July. And we were there from the 15th of July until the 5th of August. We were having breakfast, dinner outside. My kids were swimming in the spey. It was just absolutely bliss. I mean, that's Scotland for you.
Don't you mean 20 days over the last 100 years, Olaf?
What's that?
Don't you mean 20 days over the last 100 years?
No. July 2006. You look it up. We were there. I actually went to Elgin to go to Gordon MacPhail to get myself a rum because it was just too hot for whiskey. It was just too hot.
Is there such a thing?
Then too hot for whiskey?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. I've done in Switzerland tasting when it was 38 degrees, and I can tell you.
Okay, that could be a bit warm. Yeah.
Well, of course, again, is it too warm? Because, I mean, with rum, I'm quite happy to add ice as well, for example, or make it a long drink with ginger ale. Of course, you can do the same with whiskey. I mean, it's just, I'm much more happy to do it with rum than with whiskey. But no one's going to stop you, really, to do it.
If anybody's still got any 84 in their glass, I'd be delighted to hear your comments. Because, as I say, I found after 5 minutes or so, it just really, it's nice from the word go, but it just gets better and better, this one.
Yes, and Tony and a few others are asking actually if there's any left. I'm afraid that is the end of the 84.35. We don't have any more that we can put online just now. But
I've got a little bit there left. If anybody wants to pop round to the house, they can pick it up later.
Yeah, we can make a dram. We can make a whole dram out of it.
Well, probably slightly more than that. Yeah, I've got some too. On that note, however, I think we are just about ready to move on to the final dram. And for the final dram of the evening, we actually thought we'd do something different. I don't know if you'll all remember, but earlier last year, we had our flavor profile ambassadors who were members who championed a specific flavor. And we actually asked one of those ambassadors to introduce the last dram of the evening tonight, as she is the heavily peated flavor ambassador. So we're going to hear from her to introduce the final dram of the evening.
I'm Helen Welsh, and I've been a member of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society for 1.5 years now, and I am going to introduce you to the 10197 heavily peated profile. It's all of the smells that I'm really not supposed to like petrol, old-fashioned bandages, smoke, bacon, Dirty Old Fires. They're all in the heavily peated profile, and I absolutely adore them. If I could pair this whiskey with anything, it's more likely going to be something with bacon, smoky bacon, scallops perhaps. And if I was looking for something sweet, it's got to be a really good dark chocolate. If I could share this whiskey with anyone, it would be my grandfather, who's been dead for the last 30 years, but he loved to drink, and he used to park me in the corner of a pub while he chatted to his old mates and relatives. And I just really have very fond memories of that experience. And I think he would really enjoy me talking about this kind of whiskey. He has always been someone who loved the spirit. So this one's for Cyril Stanley. If I could drink the 10197 anywhere, it would be the beach by the harbour at Dunquin in Kerry. Lovely view out to the Blasket Islands, wind blowing in my face, woolly hat on, scarf, wrapped up nice and warm, using the 10197 to keep the inside warm as well. I'm Helen, the heavily peated ambassador. Enjoy.
Thank you for that, Helen. It's a great introduction to this dram, which we're going to hear more about just now.
And I have the pleasure of doing it.
You do.
A great glass you're having. That is the proper glass. It's a wonderful glass you've got as well there, with flipping out as well. It's a lovely glass, and I'm lucky enough to have one of those as well. Now I have the pleasure of introducing the number 10 from Islay. Islay, which is so wonderfully close, yet so wonderfully far away as well. My first holiday I had on Islay was in 2002. It was in October. It was the October break, school holidays for 1 week. And we stayed actually, which was then possible, at the cottages of that distillery. And it rained 7 days non-stop, actually. We tried to get the kids into the Bowmore swimming pool, and you had to book a slot within 2 days in advance for 1 hour, because all the other kids on the island as well had nothing else to do than go to the swimming pool. So I was sitting there drinking whiskey from that distillery, looking out to the bay, and the wind and the waves were crashing onto the lounge window. And I was sitting there with my peat fire, an open peat fire, and drinking that Bunnahabhain and just hoping that that window's going to hold, because otherwise it would have been a very wet affair. So that distillery is always a soft spot in mine. It's one which probably not anymore, but it has been very underrated. And what we got here, which is a very rare phenomenon, is a heavily peated version of that distillery. And we called it a slow sipper. And I think, again, that fits so well with the Coorie In theme. Just sit there and just enjoy it. Very peaty, very meaty. That's the beginning of the tasting note. And I think that really encapsulates it very, very well.
We've got a question as well on your glass, Olaf, about whether it's an Armagnac glass or a whiskey glass.
It actually, now hang on, now I have to think about it. And actually, it's a Riedel cognac glass. It's a Riedel, from Riedel, a cognac glass. Don't ask me for which one, because obviously they got probably 6 different glasses for 6 different cognacs or something. But what I just like is that lipping out slightly at the top, which makes a lot of difference. And in particular, with strong, I mean, that's my glass actually usually for rum, because you don't need to funnel the aromas like you do with the society glasses, which are very good for the whiskies. But if you got something which is very strong in flavors, you don't need that concentration. You actually rather have it a little bit more wide with some air. And then also when you drink it, it sort of goes straight above your tongue, all of it. So it's covering your tongue straight away with that lipping out. So as I say, that's the sort of glass I usually use for rums, for molasses rums, which have a very great flavor. So if you haven't tried any, I can tell you the society has cracking rums from Venezuela, from Nicaragua, from Guyana, from Barbados, Jamaica. Give it a try this winter. It's a nice winter warmer. So it's a recharred hogshead. So it's basically a hoggy, so 250 liters, which has been used probably a couple of times, maybe 3 times, then been decharred and recharred. So it's a way of rejuvenating the cask. A very good color as well, being only 6 years old. So basically, I mean, it's not quite right, but simplifying it, it's probably like a second fill, sort of like it becomes a second fill hogshead you can use. And that's why you can see still quite an active cask, which works very well with the very peaty spirit.
Wonderful legs in this one as well, Olaf.
Sorry, Les?
Saying wonderful legs in this one as well.
Yeah.
And again, if you were drinking this without knowing anything about the spirit itself, starts to tell you that it's, you know, high alcohol content and also quite viscous, which I'm certainly getting there. But it's really nice drink. Again, it's incredible. It's only 6-year-old, this one.
That's it.
Absolutely amazing. And this distillery that we're talking about, the distillery number 10, up until I think it was from 1960s onwards for a while, it was virtually, they dropped the peat almost completely from this distillery. And I remember even up until a couple of years ago, when you looked at the website for the distillery, the opening page was all about the gentle side of Islay.
They called it the gentle giant of Islay.
Yeah. But in recent years, they've been releasing quite a few peated ones, and certainly all the society bottles that I've tasted from this distillery have either fallen into the peated category or oily and coastal. I'm sure there may have been something else around that's come to my mind. That's the two sort of flavour profiles from this distillery. But again, it's 6-year-old. This is quite something, isn't it?
That's what the beauty of flavour profiles is, because number 10 could be heavily peated, lightly peated, oily and coastal, sort of, and that's where they come to life, the flavour profiles, because it's a slow sipper, salty, peppery. Yep, I agree. There's a bit of maybe even salt and vinegar. I mean, dare I say, sort of that sort of a, and I could drink this quite happily neat, because it's that peat flavor, which just gives you that balance to the alcohol. Yeah.
And also caramel sneaks in there right at the very end on the finish. I don't know if I've any mention of that in the tasting notes, but it surprised me, because I've got meaty, smoky, long-lasting finish. Then all of a sudden, I'm getting this little hit of caramel somewhere in there.
That's actually really nice. It's all of the meatiness that you get. I always get lots of kind of cooking notes with drams like this, like lentils in white wine with a pork knuckle cooked in it, and then just that sweetness at the end that's really unexpected but somehow lovely.
Yeah, water changes it. I mean, it becomes more maritime. I mean, I'm not quite sure if I enjoy it that much, because I love that intensity of it. I love that fight almost which is going on, the meatiness, the sweetness, the peatiness, the smoke and everything. That's the great thing about it as far as I'm concerned. So I probably would prefer that one neat, to be honest. Yeah,
well, this wouldn't be my preferred flavour profile, but I can appreciate these whiskies, and this one is a stunner, but I do need bit of water with this one.
Yep.
I think that brings out the sweetness. And I must admit, if I'm drinking an typical Islay dram, particularly if it's been matured, anything near sherry, the sweetness from the sherry just does it for me.
Yeah.
But this one with the rechar has done a wonderful job.
Yeah. Now, to Tyler, you were saying menthol cigarettes, which I get very, very often. Because my maths teacher, way back up to A levels and further, because he was a vivid menthol cigarette smoker, and I get that very, very often. That menthol. I don't think they're legal anymore, are they? I don't know if you can still sell them these days, but
I'm not sure.
I get them very often. I do get menthol cigarettes very often.
We've got a question for you guys as well, from Rex, which is about, is there a reason why we're seeing more young and excellent whiskies these days?
Well, I think I alluded to it earlier that the whole whisky industry in Scotland over the last 10 to 20 years, everything you read, everybody you talk to, the real experts who produce it, are all talking about the quality of the wood, and the wood management's so important now. So, I mean, the spirit, the new make spirit, is going to be on an even keel week after week after week, but putting it into real good quality wood. And I think there's just more care and attention. We had Jim McEwen on doing a session for the ambassadors 2-3 weeks ago, Olaf, if you can remember.
Yeah, I do.
He's been on about there is literally no bad wood in the Scotch whisky industry these days. It's
I think
real good quality stuff, and the way it's looked after as well, and in maturation, the warehouses, and it's surprised me, because 20 years ago, if somebody was giving me whiskies at 6, 7, 8-year-old, I would be kind of turning my nose up and thinking, well, I'd rather have something a little bit older. But in the last few years, surprised me. And I remember doing a tasting in Leeds, maybe about 10 years ago, and we had a 5-year-old Isle of Arran on, and the colour of it was almost as dark as Coca-Cola, and nobody could believe it was 5-year-old, because it was just a stunning whiskey. We sold every single bottle that night, absolutely amazing, but 5-year-old, just incredible. And as I say, going back 10, 15 years, we'd all be sort of turning a nose up and thinking, well, I'm not buying at that age, I'd rather buy something of an older age. But it does go to prove, and Olaf, and you, Mad, you sit in a number of tasting panels, it has to stack up.
No,
it won't get bottled.
No, you're spot on, Les, because I mean the thing really is that cask management, what you're mentioning. And I mean, I was someone, 10, 15 years ago, when it started, this word finishing, which actually Jim McEwen made a good point. He said it's not finishing, because finishing means it's an end, but actually when you put it into another cask, it's the beginning of a new development at the end of the day. So it's that sort of a thinking about it, which actually I found very, very helpful. And also it's, you're thinking dechar, rechar and stuff. Well, that's a knackered cask or whatever. But no, it just gives you different flavors. It's that variety. It's not all first fill, second fill hoggies as it was 20 years ago. And of course, then age was a very, very important factor. But now you've got wine casks, you've got Tokai casks, you've got everything. And that's what really makes it I always say to people, just ignore everything, ignore where it comes from, ignore how old it is, just try it. And when you like it, it's a good whiskey for you. If you don't like it, it's a bad whiskey for you. It's as simple as that. And then find out, why did I like it? Was it maybe a sherry cask? Was it maybe a bourbon? Was it a first fill, a second fill? And find out that way. But don't have all the information up front and then go in with a preconceived idea.
You've been doing this role a bit longer than I have, Olaf. In fact, a lot longer than I have. But when there was a group of us all started as ambassadors 14 years ago, and I can't recall at that time seeing many, if any, casks coming through saying recharge. So again, that's another development within the industry that's creating another opportunity for whiskey to shine in another way.
Yep. I mean, John was just asking about non-cheerful, John, more time efficient. I mean, that's again the thing. I'm not Scottish, I'm not British, so I can say that. I mean, Scotland hasn't got the monopoly for good whiskey. I mean, there's wonderful whiskey out there, which again is the variety, and the society embraces that as well. We've got whiskey, dare I say, from England, from Wales, but also from Sweden. Fantastic whiskey from Sweden coming at the society, but also proprietary bottlings. There is an enormous amount of variety out there, and we embrace it. And that's why when people ask me, Olaf, which is your favorite whiskey, I always say it's the next one coming, because I still got it in my glass and I can still enjoy it.
That's a great sentiment, Olaf. And I think unless there are any other questions, we're going to start to wrap it up for the evening. I can see I've got a question there from Neo Stuff. Is this the same Madeleine from the Facebook chats? It is indeed. I am making a rare appearance on camera. But yes, it is me. So we'll take any final questions now, and then I've got a few housekeeping points. But enjoy the drams. Don't feel that just because this tasting has ended that you need to finish them all. Come back to them, go back to the first one or the second one, and try it again and see how it changes. We've got a question from Scott there about what has the innovation of cask management been. So I don't know which one of you wants to take that one.
I'll leave it to the elder statesman. But I know,
what cask management really means is that you are looking what type of casks you're using to fill in your new spirit. Because 20, 30 years ago, there were just some casks standing randomly at the corner which were empty, and you just said, I'll just fill them, and then let's see what happens in 5 or 10 years. Nowadays, the distillery manager, the master blender is looking, what profiles do I need to actually make the whiskey which I want in 5, 10 years time. So that's where all of a sudden, and also thanks to barcodes nowadays, you've got the whole story of a cask. In the olden days, you just had it blue, purple, red, and green. First fill, second fill, third fill. And that was the end of that. Nowadays, you can see exactly how long was it in, what was it, where does it come from? Is it a port? Is it which type of port it was? And it all matters. Is it European oak, American oak? Is it an American oak sherry cask, a European oak sherry cask? Very, very different. 20 years ago, I was telling people a sherry cask is a sherry cask. Well, it's not. And it's the wonderful thing about whiskey, like everything in life. The more you know you don't know. And that's what makes it so fascinating. And that's what I've been doing now since 1983 when I drank my first whiskey. And I'm still learning every single day. And that's the wonderful thing about it.
Very well said, Olaf.
Just to finish on that, I think as well, Olaf, when we first started drinking whiskey, and just before the society were formed, blended whiskey was the whiskey of the day. That's what everybody drank.
Yeah.
And because you're taking so many different spirits from different distilleries and blending them together, a few bad casks would just get blended in and would be lost in it. But with the advent of single malts becoming more and more popular, you can't afford that with a single malt, because if you produce something which is well below par, particularly nowadays with social media, etc., news will get round and your reputation. So, and it amazed me a few years ago. I can't remember the figure, but I read the figure about what the Edrington Group were spending per annum on cask management. It was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. You, me, and Mads, and all our members are the beneficiaries of this wonderful wood management, because we're getting some amazing whiskies coming through.
I think we'll take this one final question. Why are we not drinking charred casks all the time?
Well, they all are wonderful. They all are charred, of course. I mean, sort of, they're depending on the level of char, they all are charred inside. But as I say, with this de-charring and re-charring, you're basically just putting on a complete new char level, and you're also touching new wood behind that char level. So they're basically, you're getting, as I say, simplifying it, you're getting a second fill, and it just throws up amazing flavors. That's what it is at the end of the day. It's flavors. It's not about scientific and what. You can have a first fill barrel, which is quite not active. You can have a second fill refill hoggy, which is very active. It's all about just try it, see, and then think about it. And as I say, the more you know you don't know. And how often you're sitting in the panel and thinking, I've actually just had a panel last week, and I'm about to write the tasting note for that one. And I mean, it's a whiskey which looks as dark as sherry cask. It's a refill hoggy. You just think, how can that happen? Well, it just happens because it's magic. That's what
It's
it is.
a bit of whiskey magic.
Yes, yes,
Indeed.
that's what it is. That's what it
Yeah.
is. We can find out anything, you know. We can work it all out, distillation and you name it, and this and that. But once you stick that spirit into a cask, you don't know what's going to come out in 5 or 10 years. It's just like having children. You can do whatever you want. I mean, you don't know how they're going to turn out in 10, 15, 20 years time. That's what it is.
Indeed. Well, I'm going to jump over to the less fun housekeeping points, although they are actually fun because they are fun and upcoming things that you can join in on. So our December tasting packs are actually on sale as of tonight. I'm pleased to announce that our December virtual tasting will take place on the 17th of December. So you can get your pack now, and we'll talk about the details a bit closer to the time. In terms of other ways that you can participate, we have home dining open for orders in Edinburgh and Glasgow. Even with the tier 4 changes in Glasgow, you'll still be able to collect your home dining. And if you live in Edinburgh, of course, you can dine in the venue. You need to book in advance. Bottle shops are also open in Edinburgh. And you can also have your home dining delivered if you're in Edinburgh between postcodes EH1 and EH16. The only other thing to mention is that we've got the virtual pub, the First Friday virtual pub. That'll be on Friday, the 4th of December, and it will be all about retro Christmas. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So please join us for that. If you've not joined us for one of our virtual pub sessions before, they're a lot of fun. There's special guests, there's music, and there's really good banter as well. So make sure you're there. But in the meantime, we'll go back to the three of us and have a wee toast to this evening and the drams and our amazing company of all of our members who have joined in.
Yeah, it's been wonderful having been in lockdown in England for version 2. It's nice to actually see and be involved with groups of other human beings. So it's been a marvelous night. And if I could just say one thing, Monty, I know you're watching because Linda had posted a comment early on. She liked the glass that Olaf was using. So I think there's a Christmas present coming there, Mr. Monty. So I hope that's a nice stocking filler for Linda for Christmas. But it's been absolutely wonderful sharing everything with all the members tonight and company of Olaf and Mads. Thank you very much. And Andrew behind the scenes as well. So from Harrogate, Slanjivar, have a great evening. Enjoy drinking the drams, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Slanjivar.